welcome everyone to our webinar today. It looks like the attendance is leveling off, so I think that we can go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you all to today's webinar with author Ellen Cooney and her new book, or most recent book rather, One Night, Two Souls Went Walking. My name is Michael Skaggs. I'm Director of Programs for the Chaplaincy Innovation Lab. I'm very happy that you're all joining us here today. I'm going to give just a few reminders here at the outset, and then we will get underway. First of all, this is being recorded like most lab events. And so if you miss, a point or something that you want to come back to, or you need to leave early or whatever, don't worry about that. You can always go back and watch it whenever you like. We put it on YouTube, the website, you get a link to it in your email. You can watch it lots of ways. So don't worry about that. When you get that follow-up email, there'll be just a very brief survey in there. I know we're all beset by surveys. I am too. But if you could take like 30 seconds and just fill that out. What did you like? What did you not like? What do you want to see next time? That helps us plan our future events as well. And then finally, let me thank Coffee House Press, the publisher of Ellen's book. They have provided a discount code for our audience. And so if you go to their website, it's probably just coffeehousepress.com. If not, Google it. But if you go to the website, order the book there and use the discount code One Night, ONENIGHT, you will get 25% off the book. That's for the lab audience. So please go and do that as well. Let me introduce Ellen, and then I will hand it to her. And I'm going to warn everybody up front, if you are an aspiring writer, Ellen's biography is either going to intimidate or motivate you, one or the other. There's not a whole lot in between. But Ellen was born in Clinton, Massachusetts in 1952. She is the author of 10 novels, most recently the one that we're talking about today, One Night, Two Souls Went Walking. Her stories have appeared in a wide variety of publications, including The New Yorker, The Literary Review, New England Review, and her work has been listed several times in Best American Short Stories. She has received fellowships in creative writing from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Massachusetts Artist Foundation, and now retired from over 25 years of teaching. She previously was a writer in residence at MIT, taught classes and workshop at Boston College, Harvard Extension School, the seminars at Radcliffe, Northeastern University. Ellen, you've traveled very widely. She is a visiting writer at Holy Cross College and the University of Maine at Farmington. Finally, she left Massachusetts for Mid-Coast, Maine when she retired from teaching and writes full-time from her home in the Phippsburg Peninsula. Her new novel, her upcoming novel, A Cowardly Woman No More, will be published in April by Coffee House Press. So a lot going on in the past, a lot going on in the future. Ellen, welcome. I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michael.
So tell us about the genesis of this book and why you decided to write a story that has chaplaincy right in the middle of it, and maybe give us sort of, if you can do a synopsis that doesn't give everything away, that would be great too for folks who may not have read it yet.
Okay. How about, can I start with a little bit of reading from?
Absolutely.
I'd like to give you a feel of the words. And well, there's a chaplain, and she's a woman. And she's, well, let's just go right into it. I'm going to read some little pieces from it just for a couple of minutes. My starting point was I've been thinking about souls since I was, I don't know, 4. Thinking about souls, thinking about souls. And I knew that I was going to do something overtly with souls. And I finally did after all these years of writing. And so the very first line of this novel gets right into it. Once when I was small, I asked my parents, "What is a soul?" "Oh," said my father, "it's mysterious, like the genie in Aladdin's lamp." He knew I'd been reading stories of Arabian Nights, but what he said could not be true. A soul can't slip out of a body and speak to you and grant wishes if you rubbed yourself like rubbing a lamp. I had tried many times. My mother said if she had to compare a soul to a character in a story, she'd pick Tinkerbell, the best thing about Peter Pan. So I began to imagine a fairy inside me, curled up sleeping for most of the time, perhaps on a cushion of my guts, or some pillow of an organ. Wake up, soul, I would say, but it didn't matter. I had to accept the fact it could not be told what to do. I never had a clue when it would remind me it was there, worrying about like crazy, fluttering inside my rib cage, zipping around wherever it wanted to go, because of course it would do that. It had wings. And it knew about the other thing, like that was its job. The other thing was what I called it, when there was ordinary, everything ordinary, life going on as it does, and then suddenly there's a something else. I could never describe it to myself, but I could have called it the thing that doesn't have words. Once I heard a thrush sing in twilight, its notes ascending, its melody like no other. And then I had to feel sorry for flutes whenever I heard one. Maybe the flutist was a genius of a musician, but my soul had learned a flute is not a bird. In the waiting room of my dentist, a stranger suddenly smiled, and the light of that face was beautiful. When 1 second earlier, I thought I was looking at some ugly and weird. In stacks of the library where I wandered, where almost no one went, where everything was old and a little beat up, a ray of sunlight came in, filled with swirling bits of dust when nothing else was moving, and I saw it wasn't dust, but particles of the spirits of those books, free and out playing around like no one was watching. Moments, they were moments. They belonged to the other thing. They could never be broken, as you can break a clock, but not time. I would say to my soul, you're wide awake, good job. But you can't believe in fairies forever. May I not screw up anyone worse than they are already. May I do no harm that can't be undone, probably by someone else. I never lost the habit of saying that when I'm about to go on duty. And that's my chaplain. May I not screw up anyone worse than they are already, which I think is a pretty good place to start with, because that's basically what you're starting with when you write a book. May I not screw this completely up. So that's my chaplain.
That's wonderful. And there's such, you have included so much self-awareness there. And I think, for so many people who are served by chaplains, just like the people that are with us today, they don't see that vulnerability, and for good reason. If a chaplain is working with someone in a hospital or something like that, that's not the place to show your own baggage and problems and whatever. You need
or the sense that you have no idea what you're doing. Because when you go in there, there's just you and the person. And I think it's a question of what do they expect of you, but you're a professional, you're doing your job. It's like a musician going out on stage to play an instrument, and the musician can't just suddenly stop playing their violin and say, oh, I'm kind of depressed today. You just go in there and do your job.
Recently, the lab conducted a survey with Gallup, and it had to do with how people interact with chaplains and when that happened and where that happened. And one of the challenges that we ran into was even defining chaplaincy, defining what it is that a chaplain does, and conveying, here is who that person may have been when you met them. And maybe they went by the title chaplain or maybe not. And there was quite a bit of confusion over what exactly a chaplain is and does. The folks who are here with us today, they know that professional chaplaincy is not really when you go and meet with your pastor because you're having, problems in your relationships or whatever. That is spiritual care of a kind, but that's not quite what professional chaplains are doing out in the world outside of a congregation. And so I'm wondering, what drove you to write a book with a chaplain right there at the beginning on the very first page, when there is so much misunderstanding of what it is that a chaplain even is? You wrote an entire book about them and put it out into the world.
I did. And she's the narrator, and it's her story. My chaplain, first of all, is an ordained minister. She's an ordained Episcopal minister, but she doesn't operate out of a framework of religion. I had an email from a reader. I had many, many reader emails to this book, but one of them called her an agnostic chaplain. And I kind of liked that, chaplain for everyone, this agnostic chaplain. She's a spiritual caretaker. I think of her and I think of chaplains from my outsiderness looking in, but I did enter this world, and I was in it for quite a while. I think that my sense is that, yes, it's different from pastoral care. It's being a physician of the soul is the best way that I think about it. And if you don't like the word soul, a lot of people don't like the word soul. Although, if you were to say to someone here, how you doing in your soul? Nobody is ever going to say, well, I don't have one. Okay. So you might be okay with that. But a lot of people aren't comfortable with the word soul. So maybe spirit. How are your spirits? How are you in your spirit? People have been trying to define this for as long as there have been people, because if you acknowledge the something inside you that's not, it's organic in a way because it's part of you, but it's not physical. It's that ineffable thing. We all know what it is. And we all kind of know what it does. But most of all, I think what chaplains know, when it's sick. And and I think a person going to their minister for help with their marriage or their whatever is more like going to a psychologist, or maybe just going for someone to pray with you or whatever. But for a chaplain, sometimes you're the only thing that's standing between the person who's in trouble, who is sick, who is whatever, and despair. To put it in its starkest terms, and they're going to talk to you about things that they don't talk to anybody else about, especially if someone has a terminal illness and has people in their lives who don't want to talk about it because it's too much of a freak out. You're often the only one they're going to talk to.
There is so much of the work of chaplaincy that is wrapped up in death and dying.
Yes.
And that can actually be taken in a number of ways, not only, a terminal illness that is very clearly going to end in bodily death, but maybe we're talking about permanent disability and the life that you knew is now going to die, or just some major change.
Yeah.
We don't hear that many stories about chaplains that are helping people with, a bronchitis diagnosis. Now, maybe the other things in your life going on that sort of really sets off, some difficult emotions and experiences, but usually chaplains are working with people that are really going through something extraordinarily difficult, where once they're on the other side, whatever that means, it's not going to look anything like where they sort of stepped into that situation. I'm wondering, how did you learn how to write a chaplain in there? Because I'm imagining, all right, I'm someone who has never met a chaplain before. Okay, it's going to be someone who wears a white collar and they go around distributing, holy things, sacraments or ritual or whatever. That must be a chaplain, right? Because I don't know anything about chaplaincy, but you've done it well and you've done it accurately. How did you do that? Because I don't think anyone just stumbles upon a nuanced understanding of chaplaincy.
Thank you. Well, in my work as a writer, I have, as you can imagine, because I've been at this for a really long time. I was a child writer. I've literally been writing my whole life. And I have an imagination that is, it's developed, it's trained as a musician would be trained. And I can imagine, your imagination is the same place that empathy comes from. So, we're talking about this very powerful thing, which is maybe part of the soul. But for me, all my work takes place in one setting. I have a novel that is a sanctuary for rescued dogs. I have a novel that takes place in a ballet studio. It's a setting and people doing something. I always wanted to write a hospital novel. There was going to be a hospital novel. And I kept putting it off because how am I going to do this? And I thought I would have a physician. I was like, but I also had a short story that I never could get right. And it was a woman minister. And it suddenly got put together. Now, originally, my chaplain was going to be, when I started, I'm going to do a chaplain, it was maybe going to be a lay chaplain. And then when I kind of had a kind of vision of her, and she had a collar on. I was like, I guess I better get her ordained now. And so I had to do that. And but then I imagined her going about her job, going about her profession, going about her world. I am the mother of a man who has a physical disability. My son was born with cerebral palsy, and I was a teenage mother. And he and I were in and out of hospitals all the time. He had a great many rehabilitative surgeries and a lot of therapy. I was in hospitals a lot in his childhood. If he was in there, I was in there. And this was in Boston. I met so many people. I was lucky because my son didn't have something to die of. And I met so many parents when you're it's a world. And I was one of the best off. And chaplains helped. And I learned from my own son who he would talk to. When a chaplain came in who was overtly religious, in the sense of, okay, I'm going to open this book and we're going to pray these prayers and then they're gone. That might be comforting to a lot of people, but I never saw it be comforting to anyone. What I observed were the rabbis and the ministers and the lay people who would come in and talk to you. They would come in, and when you enter the room, you're not just entering a room, you're going to where that person is inside themselves. And those are the ones who helped. I'm gonna sit and listen to you, and I'm not gonna make you feel worse than you are already, for one thing. And I am going to try and find a way to give you strength. I'm going to give you strength to help you cope with this, even if I don't really know how to. I'm going to try. I'm going to understand you. And it's not being sympathetic. It's not having pity. I'm going to go to where you are and I'm going to understand you. And what I learned early on when I realized it would be a chaplain, how did I do it? Well, I saw early on, oh my goodness, this is so like doing creative writing. And it seemed to me, and perhaps it is to me, chaplaincy involves a lot of intuition and a lot of creativity. You have to be creative, even if you don't admit that you are creative, like, oh, I don't have that good of an imagination. Oh, I can't make sense. It's not about making stuff up. It's about dealing with a situation in a way that it needs to be dealt with, and you respond to it because you can trust your own intuition and your own creativity. So it really is like doing writing, especially when you're the kind of writer like I am, where you don't do the same thing twice. No, chaplains are going to have a different day every day. And you never know when you wake up, you never know what's going to be there. Especially on the night shift, which mine is on. So yeah, I found it not difficult at all to imagine going around doing rounds with a chaplain. She's not me. She's this is not autobiographical. I invented her, but I understand what she did. I understand that when she walked into a room, she didn't know what she was going to meet, including people who are awful to her, and who do really sexist things because she's wearing a collar. And she's far from perfect. We have that in common. We're profoundly flawed human beings. But yeah, it's not that hard to imagine it. But I think for most people, when they think of a chaplain, it's a really old-fashioned kind of concept. Yeah. Probably you all know that.
And for better or worse, lots of folks have that expectation that this work is going to be sort of the old-fashioned.
Yeah.
We always reference the chaplain from MASH. That is sort of the image that a lot of folks end up having in their head for better or for worse. I wanted to circle back to something briefly that you mentioned, that you spent a lot of time with chaplains, and so you saw it firsthand. You saw what worked, you saw what didn't work. And of course, I'm asking a counterfactual here, but could this book have come about if you hadn't had that experience?
Oh, I was also the daughter of a nurse. I was in hospitals a lot as a kid, and I worked and we had, our hospital was right up the road. So I worked there as a teenager. So if I didn't have a disabled kid, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I might have. I think I might have done it because I had this minister story going on anyway, and I had this hospital thing going on that I didn't know they could be put together. So yeah, I think I would have done it anyway. Yeah.
And how old was your son when you were going through all this? And I ask that because I'm curious sort of what the approach to chaplaincy was by the people you were working with. There's a big difference between serving as a chaplain to a very small child and their family, or someone who's 14 or 15. That's going to be different. The way they see the world is different. So I'm just curious what that dynamic was. You have your child.
Yes, he was diagnosed as an infant, but his first surgery, his first hospitalization, he was 14 months old.
Wow.
And so mostly it was about talking to me, and I was so young, and it was the difference is in what he sensed it, of course, that say a chaplain would come in and say, oh my goodness, look at this teenage mother. Oh my God. And then it would be this total judgmental thing going on. And, I was pretty rebellious at that time. I was a single mom, and it was like, leave us alone. This is what we're doing. And, but I think my little boy, and then it was all through, he was, I think, 13 when he said, okay, no more surgeries, no more hospitals, no more therapy. I'm done, which I accepted. He's fine now, by the way. He lives independently in California. He's good.
Very independently. You literally could not be farther apart and still in the same country.
Exactly. Well, I didn't want him to go, but he went to grad school, and it was a trick. Okay. It was a trick. Because I had said, well, you can go to California if you go to school, and he did, and then he wouldn't come back. I'm going there next week anyway, but that's him. That's him. But then all through, like, say he would be like 6 or 7, and a chaplain would come in, and the ones he didn't want to talk to were the ones who talked to him like he was a little kid. And talk down to him, and talk to him like he knew what his disability was. He would be terrified about going into a surgery, and he wanted someone to talk to him, to tell him to not be scared.
Mhm.
Who wasn't his mom. Okay. And I think, and from that, I think that's a lot of what chaplains do, is for somebody going into a surgery. It might be a minor surgery to anybody, but to them, it's a big deal. And it's about being terrified. Everybody who's going to go into a surgery thinks they're going to die in surgery.
Yeah.
Or they're going to come out feeling worse than they are, or something's going to go wrong. And I think a lot of it is about dealing with fear. Like, tell me what you're afraid of. And that goes on in my novel a lot with my chaplain. Dealing with what are people afraid of? What are people giving up hope about? It's a way, I think a lot of it, and this is why I say it's like creative writing. Even if that doesn't sound believable, just trust me, because it's true. It's about how you use words. If you go to speak with a patient or a person with dealing with whatever, and you're dealing with their spiritual life, you need a way to communicate with them openly and solidly, without taking an upper hand. Even like you're equal to them, they're equal to you. You're not up here and they're down here, because you can, in the first couple of moments, you're going to either establish trust or not establish trust. And if you didn't establish trust, you kind of have a hard time afterward. Yeah. And it matters. It matters if you're just being yourself, if you're just at ease, even if you don't know what you're doing. Because when I start a piece of writing, I have no idea what I'm doing. I might have written a whole bunch of books, but when I start a new book, every book is the first book.
Which is both so promising because the sky is the limit, and also a little terrifying to think.
Oh, it's totally terrifying. What am I doing? I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this again.
And then you did it 9 more times, or 11, or whatever.
Yeah, and then I'm going to do it again.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want to talk a little bit about the writing process for anything. It's not just this book, but for any book. For folks that don't have a lot of exposure to sort of the publishing industry, or maybe they don't know authors in their life, this is not something where you sit down for 3 months and you write your book and then you put it in the mail, it shows up at the publisher and they say, hooray, thank you, and there it goes. It is a long and not always straight process, lots of twists and turns. And so I'm curious, for this book, along the way, what were the conversations about this character like? Because I'm imagining, and I'm totally making this up, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but I'm imagining you, sort of talking about this book in its early writing stages to someone, and they're saying, why are you writing about chaplains? What does that have to do with anything? Or who's going to read that story? I'm curious about those conversations and how you responded.
Yeah, okay. First of all, it was published by Coffee House Press. I have published in all kinds of houses. I've published with big presses and small presses. Coffee House Press is my small press, and my editor there, Chris Fishbach, took this book. Originally, it was my 3rd book with them. I'm about to do my 4th with them, but he took it. I went back to Coffee House after being in big houses because I can tell you, I was kind of hoping you would ask that question, because I think what I'm about to say will give you an idea of the kind of overall concept of what a chaplain is. All right. My then agent took it to several big houses, including the one where I last was. And I had conversations with editors. Okay. This is going to be a little depressing, so get ready. when you're a writer and you're talking to an editor at a big house, it can happen that they'll say, I'm real interested in your book. Here's what I want you to change. And they'll tell you it's like, I love you. You're wonderful. Now change everything about yourself. Okay. It's like that. And what they'll do is tell you what you have to change.
Yep.
Like, I really want to publish. Okay. Number one, the character doesn't go around on her rounds with a Bible.
That was a complaint.
Yes. Okay. Want me to say that again? This is an editor at a big house, someone who is very well educated, reads, literary. Your chaplain needs to carry a Bible when she's on her rounds. Give her a Bible. Okay. Another one. She needs to move. You have her living in an apartment development. Chaplains don't live in apartment developments. I said, really? Yeah. I said, well, give her a little house.
I'm really struggling to see the connection.
I promise you, when a fiction writer tells you she's telling you the truth, it really is the truth. She's too iconoclastic. That's bad. I have a couple more because she passed bad choices in men. She makes bad choices in men. Make her personal life a little more conventional or less problematic. Okay. So you can see why I went running back to my beloved editor at the Small Press. They're like, oh, we love this. This is so cool. Okay.
I think in popular language, this is where you would say, tell me you've never met a chaplain without telling me you've never met a chaplain.
Exactly.
Needs to carry a Bible, needs to live in a house, needs to have specific taste in life part.
Yeah. Okay.
That's really,
that was just the beginning. There were many. And then other editors had other things that they wanted. They wanted me to make her very, I don't know what they wanted. I don't know. I just, no, I can't do those things. Everybody really liked the title though. One Night Two Souls Went Walking. That was good. Oh, I know. And one of them was bothered by the fact that there were 2 dogs in the book and I should really just only have 1 dog just to streamline it. Okay.
Really exceeded the dog quota for this story.
Yeah, but because one is dead. Okay. It is a ghost. So there's another one who comes in because the other one died. Oh, I know the other thing. They wanted it to be more realistic with the service dogs because a service dog handler would never let a dog off leash okay, you know what? Yeah, well, so what? This is a novel. My service dogs go off leash. Yeah. So yeah, I think that would answer your question.
Yes.
But quickly, I can tell you some comments from people who read the book.
Okay, yes, please.
And really, I have, like when I wrote my dog novel, my rescue dog novel, I had just tons of people who rescue dogs talking. But this was different because this is about people. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read a couple.
Yep.
Okay. This is the come up from depression part. This is like there'll be despair about your image in the world. If your chaplain was real, I would thank her for waking up my soul. You made me feel hope. I don't know how you created hope, but you did it. You never used the word empathy for your chaplain, but I felt her empathy. I was a hospital chaplain for more than 30 years. You've really captured it. The best thing about this work is interacting with all sorts of people, many of whom are not religious, and musing with them about spiritual things. You have conveyed that. I love that. Let's sit around and muse about spiritual things. I am in the medical field. I hope to become a hospital chaplain. Your narrator was a true pleasure to walk with. I am writing to you because I have to let you know your chaplain touched my soul. Okay.
You know what really strikes me about all of those comments is that, did anyone that you just read to us, did they say anything about your writing style? Did they say anything about how great the story is? No, all of those comments were, this affected me personally.
Oh yeah, it's always like that. Oh yeah, it's always like that. It's nobody's going to say, oh, you did good, right? Good sentences. That's nobody's going to do that. But if the sentences weren't working, this wouldn't have worked. And my way of writing is to have a style that you don't even notice, and to have a way of writing that it appears that I just sat down and these words just came out of me quickly, and then I went and did something else fun. No, it takes all day. It takes all day to write a good paragraph. Yeah. But those are just a few of what I got. And it's so, I don't want to say satisfying. That's not it. It's just, oh, good. I did my job. And I'll say one other thing about your question about editors and people. The other thing, and this really pains me to say, the other thing that an editor wanted for a change, there's a lot of interactions in my book, one-on-one with the chaplain and somebody, the patient. And there was this editor who wanted at the end of each interaction to say what the chaplain gained from it. Okay, so say there's an old woman, a retired librarian who has a particular terror and a sense of despair that the chaplain is working with because it's her favorite patient. But she, like at the end of that interaction, the editor wanted the chaplain to say, like directly addressing the reader, here's what I gained from that interaction, because the editor felt people who go into this line of work seek self-fulfillment. Okay, and I just couldn't with that. Okay. Okay, what does that even mean? It's like you seek self-fulfillment. Okay, I'm gonna go sit with this person who is been in a fire, is a burn victim, and I'm going to talk to this person and help them out of despair, or help them not go into despair. And then I'm going to step back and say, wow, I feel really fulfilled today. That's not real. And I try to explain that there's the whole point is doing the work. Mm-hmm. The whole point is, this is what you can. Why do you do this work? Because I can. Because I have these skills. I have these abilities. Why am I a literary fiction writer? Because I can. And because I'm actually not interested in anything else. And it's not, I gain the paragraph. I gained the paragraph that took all day. So I think that was of all the things that I had to deal with, that was the most depressing.
I'm trying to imagine anyone who is not seeking self-fulfillment somewhere in their lives. I don't know why that was leveled as a criticism.
Right.
But
right.
I really appreciate you showing us this part of the creative process, because again, for those of us without a lot of experience with publishing or writing or whatever, especially for someone like you who has done this for a long time and has published a lot, it's easy to think, well, they have a good reputation, and so they're going to write a story and boom, people are going to be competing to publish it. And, it comes out of their brain and boom, it gets printed and there we go. No, it's difficult. And even, presses that you've published with before, big presses, powerful presses that have plenty of cash to burn and they could spend it on any story. They're going to say no, right? Or change it to the point where it's not your story anymore.
Yeah. And I think my point in my chaplain, I think the chaplain goes into the room and it's a two-person interaction, but the more important person in that interaction is the patient.
Mm-hmm.
That it has to be centered on the patient. But if I did that other thing, I would center it on the chaplain. Oh, this is how the chaplain's needs got met today, and it's turned around. But the important person is the person who needs something. Yeah.
As you say just now, that in that interaction, the most important person in the room is the patient. I think that most of us could agree with that in principle. Oh yeah, of course. But reading these stories, and the chaplains that are with us today can tell you that you don't really understand how true that is until, maybe you're having an interaction with someone who's really difficult, right? Or someone who kind of clearly wants you to be there, but they're giving all these other indications. They're saying mean things, or they're breaking down your tradition or whatever. So it's easy to forget that the patient or whoever, the college student, whatever, it's easy to forget that when this person becomes difficult, when it's very obvious this is not going to be a pleasant or self-fulfilling interaction. This is going to be really
right.
We are going to have a session very soon for people that are interested in chaplaincy, and we're going to have a session specifically on that. That part of this is embracing people who are radically different from yourself.
Oh yes. Oh
people
yes.
that if you were not in this chaplaincy encounter, you would never want to associate with them otherwise. And you don't have a choice as a chaplain.
Exactly. You don't have a choice.
You can't walk into the room and say, oh, you belong to that tradition, or you don't belong to a tradition. Goodbye.
Exactly. Especially if you go in the room and they're racist, they're misogynist, they're whatever. You can't judge them, but you still have to deal with that. It's like if you're a dentist, if that misogynist or that racist has an abscess tooth, you still got to pull that tooth. I think what I didn't say yet is how incredibly hard this profession is. I mean, I think it's almost as hard as being a fiction writer. I really do. It's hard and it's complicated, and it involves many different skills, a lot of which is about leaving yourself out in the hall when you go in. And if you are looking for personal self-fulfillment, go wait till you're out in the hall. That's hard to learn. A lot of it is hard to, a lot of it you can't learn. A lot of it might be a self-selecting profession in a way. And I think I wondered at the beginning of this, what is the difference between this and a psychologist or a mental health coach? There was a big difference. And it's almost like, well, if you have to ask, it's a huge difference, and it's a completely different skill set. It's a completely different talent set. You need talent for chaplaincy.
And it's the type of thing where, of course, you're going to introduce yourself as the chaplain I'm
the chaplain.
You're not going to disguise who you are, but you don't tell the person, now I'm going to chaplain you.
Right.
It's not the same as the surgeon saying, go to sleep, we're going to cut you
Exactly.
open. I've had any number of interactions with chaplains in professional life as part of the work of the lab. We'll have a conversation, and 20 minutes later, after we're separated, I realized that person just chaplained me and I didn't even know it.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
that talent. It just happens by itself. And it's something that you can't announce. There's no start and finish to it. There's no clear start and finish to it. It just has to happen on a.
It's like having a style in your writing,
Hmm?
and you don't notice the style. It's exactly that exact same thing. Yeah, oh hi, I'm gonna chaplain you now. Imagine that, and the person would shut down. Like, don't even try. Okay, yeah.
Well, and I think that most people that are here today, they probably know chaplains, or maybe they experienced this earlier in their own careers where someone tried to do that, and you find out very quickly how well that turns out. Here I am, I'm the chaplain. Let's talk about your faith, or let's pray together, right? When you lead with that, it's that's sort of like having the chaplain carry a Bible around in the book. It's just not going to be
exactly. Here I like, and we've all had experiences with this kind of person in any field. They walk in and you are so lucky that I am taking time out of my life to even look at you. Okay. No, yourself is out in the hall. And in my book, my chaplain doesn't even have a name. She's the chaplain, or she's reverend. She's the reverend, she's the chaplain. She doesn't have a name, because when she goes on duty, it matters who she is in her soul, and it matters what her essence is, but it doesn't matter anything in particular about. She's not going to go in there and say, oh, I had this really awful experience with this guy I've been dating. She's not going to say that.
Hey, but you let her keep those bad decisions from relationships despite the editor wanting them to be.
I did, because she's a person. This is about being humane, and she does have a really good boyfriend. Well, that was the other thing, because she has this boyfriend who's so much younger than she is. Well, now make him older. Okay. No.
I really appreciate that, because of course, part of the essence of chaplaincy is to, you are being present with the person in whatever way makes the most sense for them, and it's not that you have to pretend that you don't have a real life or problems, but of course you're not going to talk about them, right? You've got lots of things on your mind. You're not, but that's not the same thing as not having those things going on. And so it's very
exactly
good that you have included these things.
Exactly, because people who become, say somebody becomes a chaplain, as opposed to, say it's somebody who is ordained, and it decides to become a chaplain rather than a regular minister. I think, and this is not saying anything judgmental about a minister. I think the person who would be drawn to the chaplaincy is the person who's more individualistic, and is, again, that word creative, because you're alone. Mm-hmm. You're by yourself. You are walking down the hall, entering that room by yourself. You don't have vestments on. You have a collar, because my woman has a collar, and I love that she has a collar. And I love talking to ministers about collars. But you're by yourself. You don't have a liturgy. You don't have anything. There's just the words that you utter are your own words when you sit down to do spiritual counseling with this other person. They are your words. Mm-hmm. And you can't say the same thing you said yesterday to somebody else, because you had the burn victim yesterday. Today you've got somebody about to go have intricate cardiac surgery. So you're going to have to say a whole different kind of thing to this person to deal with their fear. So you have to have words ready or know when to be quiet.
Yep.
Say, here I am. As if saying, I don't know what to say, but I'm just going to sit here and take my cues from you. Okay. That's like writing. That's an act of creativity, because every time you go in that room and deal with them, you're making something. You're creating something that was not there.
Mm.
And only chaplains do that, except for creative writers.
I'm glad you say that, because we have a question that gets to this exactly. And this person says, I like the similarity between chaplaincy and the creative process, and that it takes courage to do both. How do you, Ellen, as an artist, find the courage to continue to write? Your answer might help us find the same in our moments of fear. That's a great question.
That's an excellent question. I never, the courage, I find everything, to every book I start takes courage. But really, the real fear is not doing it. So it's about, oh no, what if I never actually do this again? What if I, oh no, what if I lose my powers and I can't do this again? Or what if I don't even try? Or how bored am I going to be in my life if I don't summon whatever it takes to write this new book? How ordinary am I going to become?
Mm.
Chaplains, like creative writers, really are not ordinary people. Even if you try to pretend and pass for ordinary, you're actually not ordinary, or you wouldn't be interested in this. Because it takes a certain bunch of skills, and it takes the ability to be alone, and the ability to trust yourself, and resilience. Yeah, you're gonna hit bottom. You're gonna hit bottom. You're gonna have a bad day. You're gonna face somebody who was awful to you or who you couldn't reach. There's going to be people you can't reach. And you have to deal with that. You have to know how to go home and just feel the weight of that and be really bummed out, and then get up and do it again. And that's the difference. A lot of people who are writers have been through a series of rejections or bad reviews, or just awful things that people are saying about your writing, really awful things, and you can't bear it. This is about, I think first responders know this. Paramedics know this. You get on the scene and, oh my goodness, look at this. How do you get it together to go back and do it again? So there's a big dropout rate of people who can't go back and do it again. So it's getting the courage to go back and do it again, because the only alternative is to not do it.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Crystal, I think, is very hopeful about the prospects of the Reverend appearing again. Would the Reverend ever appear again?
Oh, for another book.
chaplain?
No, this was all my books. I get that a lot. Oh, can we have the sequel? Can we have the sequel? My feeling is, when I end a book, and this is my really favorite thing about being a novelist, and it's really hard to do. When you end it, and when you start to get near the end, you hope so much that the reader will keep it going in their head. So, oh, you want a sequel? Great. Think of your own. Because you want to be activating. You want to be activating their imagination, which is, I think, what the reader who wrote to me the email that said, your chaplain woke up my soul. I think that's a lot of what goes on, that awakening kind of thing, because so many people's souls are in a state of dormancy because they've been crushed, because their own creativity and their own imaginations have been crushed because of the culture we live in.
Yeah.
In many parts of this country, kids are being crushed in their imaginations. And it's the duty of the spiritual counselor to get that spirit going again. If it's never going to be dead, it's never going to be fully broken. You just have to reactivate it.
That's lovely. I want to end here with some of the comments that people have been leaving here in the chat. Someone described this as an hour of power for them. And I think that is such a great way. That is such a great way to describe it. Lots of gratitude for getting it, for understanding what it is that chaplains do. And even though I'm not a chaplain myself, I can see why chaplains are grateful for a story like this, because I have conversations all the time with folks that, they think they know what it is that chaplaincy is. And then we begin to talk and I realize very quickly, no, you've actually never met a chaplain, have you? You might have a favored clergy person in mind, but you've never actually, you've never met a chaplain. I do want to mention, someone pointed out a mistake that I made at the beginning of the webinar. If you would like to order the book and use the discount code is one night 25, not just one night. So ONENIGHT letter number 2, number 5, one night 25. You can order that from Coffee House Press. Ellen, I really want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your process, your life story. I hope that everyone here takes away. These chaplains, you should take something away from this interaction, isn't it? That's okay. We won't tell the editor that wanted that otherwise, but taking away that you have invested so much of yourself, both creatively and personally, in this. And I think that comes through in the book wonderfully.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lots of comments in the chat that they cannot wait to read the book. They're going to get started right away. People are listening to it on Audible. I'm sure they've bought it during the webinar. And so good reading, happy reading to everyone else. Thank you, Ellen, for being with us. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
You'll get a copy of this recording here in the next couple of days. It just takes us a few days to get it ready to go, but we'll send it out to you and then you can watch again whenever you like. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.